Would you like to avoid making some of those mistakes that commercial roofers make in the beginning? We got a lot of mistakes we're going to talk about today. Hi, this is Daniel Lakstins, and welcome to the Roofing Business Builder Podcast. Now, this week we're going to talk about the top mistakes commercial roofers make and how to avoid them. And I have my special returning guest, Leah Lakstins, back on the show. And so welcome to the show, Leah.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you. Now, we're going to talk, before we get into that, I want to do my intention of this show. And this show's intention is, I am an expert. Think about that. You are an expert. So say to yourself, I am an expert. But you might say, well, Daniel, maybe I'm not an expert at everything. Well, not right now if you're at that level, but we're all progressing and we are experts in what we're doing. So maybe you don't know about built up, or maybe you don't know about spray foam or coatings. Maybe you don't know about PVC and you're a TPO person, or maybe you're EPDM. You are an expert in the knowledge that you have right now, and you're going to be growing into being an expert in whichever field that you wish to grow into. But always hold that intention that I am an expert, and that sensation that you have when you feel like you're an expert is going to permeate into your customer base, and it's going to help your sales to grow. So today we're going to talk about the top mistakes commercial roofers make and how to avoid them. So what should we get into talking about first, Leah?
Well, I think there's just such a broad range here of mistakes that can be made in commercial roofing, especially when you're transitioning in, that I thought it'd be cool to break it up into production mistakes and business setup administration mistakes and go through these. So can take either one that you want to hit up first.
Well, I think a lot of people listening to the show, we came from the residential roofing first, and then we moved into commercial. And one of the first mistakes I see commercial roofers make is a similar mistake that you can make on a residential roof, leaving the roof open overnight. And when you're looking at the weather map, I'm telling you, we live here in Central Texas, Austin area, and that weather person cannot predict the weather whatsoever. I swear, it's like, it's going to rain, and it doesn't rain. It's going to be 50 degrees, it's 80 degrees. It's going to be, whatever. They can't predict. So you should always do a night seal, but the mistake that commercial roofers make is not knowing how to do a night seal.
Yeah, and it's funny because, a lot of manufacturers, or I think probably all of them, none of them will clarify how to do a night seal.
I wonder why, guys. What would you say is the reason why manufacturers would not want to clarify exactly how to do a night seal? Do you know why?
Because if it leaks, it's on them.
Yeah,
so it's better
liability.
For them. The more ambiguous they can be on this, then the better liability-wise for them.
In a court of law, they may actually, lose if they told you how to do something and say it didn't.
It didn't work.
They can lose some money off of that, and that's not a good thing for them. So they want you to hold the liability. They want your insurance company to pay for the damages if that roof leaks. So, but that's one thing. So how can they do a night seal? What should they do?
Well, it obviously depends on the material that you're using. There are a lot of different methods. Most incorporate like a mastic or caulk and then a termination bar at the edge. And obviously you want to, as much as possible, only tear off what you're going to re-roof for that day. And we're talking about night seals generally in re-roofs, but you do use them in new construction as well. Just a little bit less liability there, since hopefully the interior is not finished at the point that in new construction you're doing the roof, although that can be up in the air as well, right?
I've seen that so many times.
I've seen
GC just
drywall.
Doesn't care. It's like, let's just drywall it. There's no roof on there.
Drywall before the roof deck's in.
And then they try to blame the roofer for all the drywall that's destroyed. It's like, well, that's the GC's fault.
Yeah, definitely. But generally you're talking about re-roof scenarios where night seals are really important. and you want to only tear off the amount that you're going to re-roof, and then essentially the detail you're going to look for, whether it's single ply coating, well, obviously coatings, it's going to be very easy, right? Because you're just going to end right there. It's a beautiful thing about coatings. But single ply, foam, modified and built up roofing systems, you're going to need to do a night seal. And essentially you're going to look for the detail inside the spec book that ties in whatever the existing roofing system is with the recover system that you're using. So if you're working on...
And you really, I never thought of this, but some people may even try to weld down on top of something. I guess that could be acceptable because you're not going to have interactions for a time. But when you come back, how are you going to start the next morning and move on?
Like if you're doing PVC to PVC, over PVC.
Yeah, so that would work. But remember, PVC manufacturers have different formulas. So remember this too, don't do a repair with a different brand. You have to use like brands. So if it's, and even within the same manufacturer, you may have different formulas that you can't. You have to read the spec, the manual on that too. But for a temporary night seal, it's not going to leak. You're not going to have separation of those seams if that were to happen. A lot of ones would prefer you actually attached to the deck. So if you're tearing off, you'd want to have the sealant in between the membrane and the deck, and then put a termination bar down. But then you still have to worry about covering it up. So most of the time, you would run sealant across the top of the membrane where you're stopping, not the new fresh stuff, but the old roof, and then bring that membrane over, and then drop a termination bar, and then caulk that seam. And that would be a fair night seal. Just make sure it's not going to leak. And then the next day, you don't necessarily have to pull that term bar up. You can just overlap it 6 inches and then move on down the road.
Yeah, and you hit on another really good one there with compatible materials, because that's another mistake that contractors make is when they're doing a repair, they don't use the same material. And usually you see this on TPO or PVC. They come back and do a repair with asphalt. And that's the absolute worst because it's going to break down in a very quick time period.
Yeah.
But even using, like you mentioned, a different brand, PVC over PVC.
They think that, that's compatible. That's okay. Nope, it doesn't work.
It's going to void the warranty, and it will generally break the material down. And TPO over PVC or vice versa definitely will break down in a fairly short time period.
Plasticizers migrate, and so when everything wants to equalize, and so whenever you're putting something over something else, even manufacturers, if you come back and you're using some old material or new material, either way, even the age of the material can have an effect on it. Even with shingles, that's the reason why you'll see shingles curl prematurely if you don't put a separator sheet. If you're just doing an overlay and you just lay them down on those dry, nasty shingles, then the old shingles start to equalize with the new shingles. It's pulling all the good oils. They're equalizing, and so you'll see. Especially in the north, you do overlays, they may only last 8 years, and you're talking with a 20-year roof, or they may only last 14 years with a 30-year roof. So it's always best to put down some black paper in the residential. But when it comes to commercial, these products are really incompatible. So if you're doing something temporary, great, but you don't want to go in there and look like a hero by doing a repair with incompatible materials, and then 3 months later you get a phone call from that customer, and they're telling you that, well, you voided my warranty, you charged me $3,000, and now it's going to cost me $10,000 to have it repaired, and they're going to cut all your shit out of here and put down the proper thing. So that's a good way to lose a customer.
Yeah, definitely. And it's always a good idea when you're up on a repair to ask them if they have a warranty in place, and if they don't know, sometimes they won't even know the manufacturer. Some of these building owners, if you can track down the manufacturer, then it's karma. What goes around comes around. If you can save them money on this install, We've talked about it before. Most commercial building owners own more than one property. So if you can treat them right and save them money on this project, then you're going to be their roofer for life. Versus if you try to work on a product that you're not authorized with, and then once it all gets unraveled, the manufacturer and whatever contractor is authorized, they're going to trash you, like, just period. They are.
Oh, yeah.
And so generate goodwill by trying to find out the manufacturer. If you're licensed with them, awesome.
And if you're not licensed with them, I mean, it hurts, but you're going to lose that customer. You could, you might. If you do what Leah just said, you may not. But the thing is don't worry about that. Worry about your reputation, because you definitely, if you come back and say that, hey, look, this roof, I already checked on it. You know, it's this brand, and looks like you have 7 years left on your warranty, and so you're gonna have to get a contractor that's licensed. We're not licensed with that crappy product. I'm kidding. Don't say that. but,
Yeah.
But that's what you want to do. And but you might say, well, I'll go out and get licensed with that. Well, and no matter what, once you call into that manufacturer, you know that another roofer or 3 other roofers are going to show up to that project. So that's something to know, but don't be upset about it. It's just that's the way things go. And always do the right thing, because your reputation is more important in the long run than any short amount of money that you can make right now.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of on this line of thinking, you know, I think another big one that people don't do in like the lead up process, you know, because we're kind of talking about like looking at the roof in the evaluation process, is, you know, doing destructive testing, wind calcs, pull tests, even if you're doing
Destructive
a coating.
testing, what is that? Yeah, it's like, oh, did you do a pull test on that roof? Or no, what's the strength of the deck? I don't know. What do you mean? How do I do that?
Yeah, exactly. And like the core cut specifically, because sometimes it'd be like, well, I'm going to do a coating anyway, so I don't really care what's up there. Well, you do care if it's got more than 2 roofs on it, because by code you need to tear it off. You do care if that roof is completely saturated with water, and it's going to create issues with the coating or the foam that you're using.
If you use foam and there's moisture in that deck, I mean, it will cause gas bubbles inside, and then they're going to try to escape before it cures. I mean, then next thing you know, the air conditioning guy's walking across and just cracking it straight through, because there's air pockets, because overnight or over a couple of days while it was curing, the create gas air bubbles inside. No, it's a very bad situation. You have to do a core cut and find out how saturated that roof is. And you don't want to just do one. You want to do several, and you want to also do those core cuts in the nastiest, worst ponding watered area. You know, you have to really, you want to find out how bad this roof is. Don't sit there and say, well, I don't care, I'll just get the roof done. Well, that's going to be your reputation down the road. If you're building a company that's going to be worth millions of dollars down the road, you definitely want to do everything the right way, because you're looking at the history of your roofing company, not the short, quick dollar or the quick fix.
Yeah, definitely. And when it comes to pull tests, these are important for your wind calculations when you're doing single ply, modified, built up. We've seen a lot of issues around this, where even in Florida, you actually are required, an engineer has to stamp the wind calc, and they're going to give you a fastening pattern that's going to show you how many fasteners go in each insulation board, what the perimeter enhancements need to be like, how many inches on center you're going to fasten or adhere this product, like what the perimeter is going to be like on the adhering process.
You got 3 zones
We've
you
seen,
have to look at, right?
We saw a project, you know, in Florida, you'd think, well, everybody's always going to do this. Like here in Texas, there's no law, there's no rule that says that you have to.
A manufacturer should be double checking that, but sometimes they don't.
Required by the manufacturer, it's good practice from NRCA, so you can get sued for not doing it, but there's no like written law in Texas that says you need to do destructive testing or when calculations. Well, I take that back. On the coast there is, because
Yeah,
TDI,
TDI.
you do have to get it approved along the coast.
You have to have a
but-
stamp from an engineer.
Yeah, true.
But,
But
even,
if
even
you're
in those
if-
cases, there's been situations where the customer didn't know, the roofer didn't know, and they just did it. And
fastened whatever they wanted
No
to do,
permit, no-
18
yeah.
inches on center, and yeah. But we saw a project in Florida where it was just basically a really long story, but the guy was like, somebody was supposed to go back and do the pool test. No one
they wrote
ever
down
did.
a number just temporarily, thinking that, oh, well, just until we get things going, and then they forgot about it.
And the whole roof came off in a storm like 2 years later, and everyone got sued, multi-million-dollar lawsuit, because it was a condo building. People lost their jobs. Terrible scenario, all because somebody wrote in a number that they meant to replace instead of actually physically doing the pool test, which would have taken them like what, an hour? Like, yes, it takes time, but
It takes time, but hey, guys,
saved
that's what
millions of dollars and millions of headaches.
If you're
they
making
done it
millions
right.
of dollars, I mean, are you going to make millions of dollars? Yes, you are, right? So if you're going to make millions of dollars, let's spend the time and let's spend the money, So invest in
Yeah.
ourselves, invest the time to do the right thing.
And this kind of goes into installation methods. Like, I hate it when contractors think the same material and same installation method is going to work on every single project.
Spec books, they don't just have one spec book. There's multiple. Every company has their own spec book, and if you don't do it their way, the way they test their material, it has to be installed the way they ask, because there are some differences.
But when the spec book does not align with NRCA,
You follow NRCA, because
Yeah.
that's who you're going to, I mean, if you're going to get sued, the lawyer is going to, or the judge is going to be looking at the NRCA's book, the best practices, and it's building code. The NRCA, it's entered into the building code, so.
and this is a big one when it comes to concrete decks. NRCA calls these non-nailable decks for a reason.
Concrete. No, we're talking structural concrete.
Structural concrete.
Yeah, structural concrete.
Yeah,
So-
lightweight concrete's like its whole other thing we can do a show
Yeah.
on
Augers,
augers and all that. So, but structural concrete is a non-nailable deck. So according to NRCA, they think that should always be fully adhered. Now, granted, roofing manufacturers
Different
don't
ones, yeah.
go along with that always.
Yeah. I mean, there may be other ways that you can save money than using fully adhered. I think that times have changed a little bit with pricing on fully adhered versus mechanically fastened. But even mechanically fastened, that if you have to pre-drill, you go through a lot of diamond bits doing that.
Structural, yeah. And
Ooh, by
and
the
you
way-
gotta over drill too.
By the way, there's another mistake that contractors would make a lot too, because if they are fastening the concrete, I mean, there's times that you can fasten the concrete, but if you are, make sure that you're drilling at least a quarter to a half inch past the length of that screw that's going to be fastened, because what happens is the powder from the drill bit falls down into the hole, and so your screw, then when you try to drop that screw into concrete, it's going to be sticking up about a quarter to a half inch. So definitely do some pulls, and then you'd have to cut that off maybe with a sawzall or something like that, but it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, definitely. Fully adhered is the way to go on structural concrete, but if you are mechanically fastening for whatever reason, always pre-drill.
Yeah.
So that when that dust falls in, you can still get that fastener down. You don't want a raised fastener on structural concrete.
And definitely use your depth that has that big old metal piece on the side of your hammer drill. Use that depth gauge, so that way set that, and then your hammer drill will stop right at the right point that you've selected.
And more on starting up, I think this is another thing that guys forget to do, or companies forget to do, is do your test strips. Whether you're using the robot, Leister hand welder, or even a spray rig, all of these things need calibrated every day to make sure that they're set up correctly to get the correct weld or the correct basically sealant.
And you know why? It's because of humidity. There's different factors. Temperature outside and humidity will have different results on the speed in which you're welding because they'll melt quicker on hotter days. If it's humid, it may melt quicker. So you have to do your calibrations because temperatures change from day to day, humidity changes from day to day, even from after morning to afternoon. You may have to calibrate. Right after lunch, you might want to recalibrate. So don't allow any of your employees to be lazy about this sort of thing, because why? It'll cost you money. It'll cost your reputation. And let's build something that's going to last a long time by not making these sort of commercial roofing mistakes.
Yeah, and I think to kind of finish up on the installation side, another huge mistake that I see is, using subcontractors that are unsupervised. Subcontractors are amazing. There's some really awesome ones out there, but no sub is going to install the roof exactly the way you want because they don't work directly for you. So always have a superintendent on site that's overseeing it, making sure things are the way that you promised. That's the other thing, is a sub may not have a copy of the scope of work. He should, but if he doesn't, you need someone there that can make sure that you're following the scope of work that you and the client agreed to. Someone there to interact with the client when they're on site, to clean up trash every day or make sure the trash is cleaned up, to make sure the equipment's properly calibrated, to check cold welds and lifts.
And even if they don't know any of that, to at least have someone that's your employee watching over the subs is going to make the sub feel like, ooh, they're going to be on their toes more. But let me even give you one more. When it comes to subs, don't use a residential roofing sub crew ever. Just don't do it, because there's so many people. We had so many customers this happened to over and over. They're starting the roof and they don't have a sub, and they're talking to one of the residential subs and they go, oh no, I can do that. I can do commercial roofing. Well, you have to ask them, well, which product have you used? Okay. Are you certified with
all
that product?
of them.
All of them. Subs should be certified through the manufacturer too. A lot of roofers will say, well, I don't want my sub to be licensed, but the thing is you kind of do, because you know who's good and who's bad. A true sub is not going to take work away from you. If they do, they're cutting their own throat, so you don't have to be afraid of that. If they do cut their own throat, then you don't use them anymore. They were not going to be a good sub for you anyways. But never use a residential guy that has zero experience that claims he can do that, because it always turns out very, very, very bad. So only use subs that are doing high volume and that can put you in the schedule. And then just tell your customer that I'm going to put you on the schedule. Find out what the sub schedule is going to be like 3 weeks from now, I don't know, 6 weeks from now. And then go to your customer and say, hey, we're booked out 6 weeks. And just most customers, if they hear that, they say, ooh, that's not a bad thing. To be booked out is really a good thing, because it means that you're providing a high value that people are willing to wait for.
Yeah, and on that note, we knew of a contractor that actually lost a lawsuit. Basically, he and the manufacturer got sued by the building owner for fastening into a concrete deck.
Yep.
And the manufacturer threw him under the bus and said that his sub was not licensed, even though knew this.
We didn't hear about this till later on, but the sub was licensed.
Well, that's a secondary point too.
Yeah, but we didn't. I mean, we didn't hear about this for
They knew the whole scenario, but they found out by basically the crew that was there, that was linked to the same sub that was licensed. They basically found it out and said that, hey, like, this particular guy was not authorized by us, and therefore the contractor violated the agreement and it's on him. And so be very aware of that. Whatever manufacturer you're authorized with, get it in writing that they do or do not require the subcontractor to be authorized as well.
This is
like,
so
it
true.
needs to be very clear from them. Hey, I'm getting ready to use this sub that you recommended, manufacturer's rep. I want it in writing that that's okay. That he's not authorized with you guys because you guys won't authorize him because he's a sub. And so I want it in writing that I'm free to use him.
And that's another area that a lot of contractors don't realize too, is that the person that you can ask to find out who are the good subs and the bad subs is either your rep or even the tech rep. It's best to ask the rep, but then the tech rep's kind of nice. He's in the know or she's in the know.
Yeah, a lot of times they know the real quality of the work,
Yeah.
right? The inspector, tech
Yeah,
rep.
tech rep. So, and then, but yeah, that's a way to find out who's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, should we move on to the administrative side?
Administrative.
I know we could stay on
Yeah.
installation mistakes for like 3 days, but
Well, what big mistakes do you think, Leah, roofing contractors make when it comes to the administration side?
yeah, I think the biggest two that stand out to me are not building to scale. Like they are the business. If they leave, then nothing happens. And that goes to the training and having video operating procedures. Written standard operating procedures are awesome. Every business should have them. But
SOPs.
let's admit that most people do not learn by reading an employee handbook. Just like
Some do. I do know a lot of people that it's like, and you want your guys to take home that spec book and read it for 2 hours every night. 2 hours every night. It's like the Bible. Just keep on reading it. Keep on reading.
But whether they'll absorb that information or not, the best way for people to really absorb information is through videos. So step one when you're transitioning to commercial is you want to write out the process that you want them to take, can base it on what you did in residential or create your own system, or
These are, yeah.
go to Roofing Business Builder, right? And we
Roofing
can help
Business-
you build this
yeah.
system. But then be very thorough in recording the exact process that you want everyone to take from the second the call comes in to the end, the final inspection on the roof.
Wait, Leah, are you saying that SOPs, standard operating procedures, I would have to write out everything that is done within that job description of that one employee, whether it be on the roof, and then make a whole SOP just, or, standard operating procedure for the installing techs, and then go to the office and then find my office person, whatever their job is, all day long for 5 days a week. I have to write out everything that they're supposed to do from beginning to end, and then find the next person over here, marketing, then write out the SOPs. You saying we have to write all that? That's a lot of work.
Right, you can, or I'm saying that it's even better to just film it
both.
all.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
film it all.
But film it all. But you really should have both, because you want them to sign the film or sign the document, or have something to where they can reach and grab a binder and go, what am I supposed to do? The owner is on his yacht today, so let's see. That's what you want. You want several books and information, and then make the videos, because there's some of us that learn better through videos, and there's other of us that learn better through reading books. But either way, kind of need both.
Yeah, definitely. But focus on the videos.
Because
If you're only gonna do one, do the videos, because it's easier for you and it's easier for them to absorb.
Right. And of course, in the Roofing Business Builder program, we actually have that spelled out for you too, and we have downloadable worksheets and things like that to help you.
Yeah.
So let's see here. What else? How can we?
I know your big pet peeve on administrative side
What's that?
is the shotgun versus the snipe, right?
Yes. You guys probably have heard us say this before. Don't bring a shotgun to find your customer. Bring a sniper rifle. Why is that? Because when you're marketing, you don't want any roof. You want a roof that you specifically are really good at doing, and that the customer will identify you with their building. And so with a sniper, you're actually targeting exactly who you want, what type. And so if you have a niche, or better yet, a micro niche, that means a niche within a niche, then you're going to have all your pictures of roofs on your website, or your landing page at least. So if it's commercial roofing landing page, when this customer looks at your website, they say, that's my building. It's not their building, it's another one, but you are in that niche. So then they can identify and feel comfortable with you. They're going to think, this roofer knows how to do it. I went to the other roofer's website, and all I saw was residential pictures. And so I don't feel comfortable with those guys, but I went to your website, and wow, that building, that roof looks just like my building, which means that they're going to know how to install or solve my problems. So, but you do that through sniping. And then when you're marketing to that particular customer, when they go to look at what you're doing on your website, it feels so familiar, it feels so natural that when you close, when you go in there and you finally do the roof evaluation and you put the book together and you're flipping through and you get to that last page where the agreement's on there, they just pick up the pen and sign because they already feel like they know you. Because you've matched your niche to them, and so closing becomes easy.
Makes closing a breeze, definitely. I would say probably another one of my big ones is contractors that don't get referrals because their clients love them, but there's no proof whatsoever of it. And getting referrals is hard. I know it is, guys. It really is. You got to stay after it. But
you might just sit down as soon as the job's almost done. Just sit down, just grab the chair, sit down.
Here's your warranty, and get this warranty, tell me what you thought about our work.
Just say we're good. Say we're good.
Yeah, hold a retainer on your sales rep
and
until
for you guys listening, I was holding the camera. Or the Leah's cell phone and pretend that I was filming us together.
Hold a retainer on your sales rep until you get the referral from the client, the video referral, or they say yes or no to it. Like, of course, there could be some scenario where they don't want to give you a referral, but like 99.9% of the time, they're going to give you a great video referral regardless of whether, you did a good job or not because of the way that you handled the relationship. So I always get the referral.
Oh, if you have a big mistake happen where it leaks in on the building, that's not the end of the world, guys. A lot of times we'll hear people say, "Oh no, I ruined my reputation. It leaked in on the owner's desk." That's good. How is that good? Well, because you can ask them for a reference, and they'll laugh and say, "Well, what do you want to reference? You leaked in on the roof." And he said, "Yeah, did we run our way? Did I fix it?" All of us have employees that can make a mistake. One of my employees made a mistake and it leaked in on your desk, and we're so sorry, but did I not clean your carpet? Did I buy you a new desk? Did I not pay for everything? Did I get it done in a timely manner? So I would like a reference from you, sir or ma'am, because I want my customers that are looking at us to know that when shit does happen, I'm not going to run. I actually stand up and I fix my problems and I solved your problems, and I need a reference for that. So whenever that big mistake happens, handle it properly, handle it quickly, and then ask for a reference, because that's one of the best ones you can get.
Definitely.
Shows who you're made of, what you're made of, who you are.
And I guess to kind of wrap up this topic, I think we're going to have to do a part 2 on this. But to wrap it up, I would say not getting change orders in writing is probably, especially in new construction, but even on re-roofs, and not like clearly defining the scope of work.
Don't do work unless you have, if someone says, "Hey, I need you to do this," and you say, "Okay, I'll do that for this much money," get it in writing. Though, do not do the work until it's in writing. I know there's all these handshake agreements, but what happens is a month later or 2 months later, they may not remember.
They forget,
And that day they were feeling really happy, and the next time, like, I don't remember that. I don't, and they don't have the money because they forgot or whatever, So put it in writing. Correspondence, even with manufacturers.
Yes.
To your company.
Everything in email, everything in writing. If it ain't in writing, it didn't happen.
Your employees too. If they say something, you're going to get to a point where if you have so many employees that you say, "Look, that sounds good. Send it to me in an email or put it on Slack."
Slack it. Yeah,
Slack it. You should not be answering your phone. I know this one contractor, bless his heart. His office personnel would call him. They'd answer the phone and say, "Oh yeah, well that's a question for Mr. So-and-so," and then they would actually, "Here, let me give you his phone number." Bad idea, because that guy was answering his phone. We need our employees to try to limit the amount of time that they're trying to take away from us, or at least use Slack. And that way there's a track of what the conversation was. A month from now, if something were to happen, you can go back and look at those conversations and know the true story, because you're like, "No, I never said that." "Yeah, you did." "Well, right here, it's Slack. You can read what you said." So that's
100%.
So that would save you some time and money. What else do we have? Anything? Is that it?
I think that's it for part one
Part one.
of
Yeah.
Don't F Up the Roof. I mean,
That's right.
top mistakes commercial roofing contractors make
Yeah.
and how to avoid them. I think we gave some good advice on how to avoid it all,
Hey,
too.
and by the way, I know we don't usually shout you out like this because now Leah and I, we own a few different businesses, but roofing's something that we both were in for. Leah's over 20 years, me over 30. But we do own a couple of hemp type of businesses, and Leah's the CEO, so it's really a privilege for us to have her on the show. But hey, Leah, if someone wants to learn more about you and what you do, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can go hit me up on LinkedIn, Leah Lakstins there. It's probably the number one best place to get in touch with me and see what I'm up to. And
Her videos are a lot of fun too. So yeah, if you look at hemp tours, you can go to LS Media is one of our
LS Media TX on YouTube. I run a program called Hemp Business Builder, which might sound familiar to you roofing business builder individuals, and basically do the same thing there that Daniel does here, guiding emerging entrepreneurs in the hemp industry. So it's a very fascinating industry. You guys think you have a lot of regulations. It's like insane. The number of regulations in hemp. Actually, it's probably somewhat comparable, but there's just a lot of additional things. Okay, like you get to run Facebook ads. Hemp, you can't really do that. A lot of things that you have to work around. So it's
hard
very
to market in the hemp industry.
very
And
interesting industry, but I love
roofing, you can make a whole lot more money in roofing. Commercial roofing, we're talking
depending
on what
where there's risk, there's reward, which is why the cannabis industry also you can make a lot of money. It's high risk.
But you have to have a higher investment than in a roofing.
Yes,
That's the thing is, I mean, if
very
you want
much so.
If you wanted to get into an extraction facility or a processor, you're going to
Yeah.
be spending between $250,000 to close to $2 million.
And roofing is not so ambiguous when it comes to the rules. There are a lot of rules in roofing, but you can find organizations and books and ways to understand what those rules and regulations are. Whereas in hemp, you have to just sort of figure out a lot of things since there aren't a lot of regulations in place to know if you're doing it right. So very interesting industry, but I loved my time in the roofing industry and I love being here on Roofing Business Builder podcast. So look forward to being back again soon.
That's awesome. So guys, and now it's time for Did You Know? Hey, did you know that you guys can book a complimentary strategy call directly with me? All you have to do is go to roofingbusinessbuilder.com and you can schedule a call and I'll work on some strategies. I will be asking you some questions about your business, where you're at, finding out what your ratio is when it comes to residential to commercial, and give you some strategy calls, strategy information based upon your needs at this time. And so feel free to go to roofingbusinessbuilder.com, or you can follow up with any of our reps with the company. So, but that's one of our Did You Knows. So the goal is to help you guys grow your business, grow into, this country needs more labor, more educated roofers that know what they're doing, and it's not going to stop. We're going to keep growing. Well, that's it for the Roofing Business Builder podcast. I hope you loved the show. I had a great guest with Leah. We talked about things that you don't want to do in the roofing businesses. We talked about things that you don't want to do, and we talked about ways that you can do them properly. So continue to grow your business, and we're here for you. And remember this, I don't always consult on commercial roofing, but when I do, I make millionaires. Stay wealthy, my friends.